Cleveland, Ohio, also known as the Western Reserve, Forest City, the 216, Believeland, or the North Coast. Birthplace of Halle Berry, Jake Paul, Kid Cudi, Paul Newman, and Drew Carey. I think Cleveland would make a good claim for LeBron James as well, even though he was born in nearby Akron. Cleveland is a great American city located in northeastern Ohio, on the south shore of Lake Erie. As of the 2020 census, Cleveland had a city population of 372,624, a metro population of 2,185,825, and a combined statistical area population, which includes Akron and Canton, of 3,732,803, making the Cleveland area the 17th largest combined statistical area in the United States. Throughout much of the 20th century, Cleveland was one of the 10 largest cities in the United States and was an iron and steel industrial powerhouse that produced machine tools, automobile parts, sewing machines, and a multitude of other manufactured goods. Some may know Cleveland as the host city of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Others may know Cleveland as being home of the Browns, Cavaliers, and Guardians, or for the Cleveland Clinic, or for having Playhouse Square one of the largest performing arts centers in the United States, or maybe for having world-class institutions such as the Cleveland Museum of Art. Today, Cleveland is home to a myriad of Fortune 500 companies, including Progressive and Sherwin-Williams, and to other large companies such as American Greetings. Cleveland also hosts one of the 12 U.S. Federal Reserve banks. Cleveland undoubtedly has played a significant role in the history of the United States. But why did Cleveland grow to the enormous size it is today? To understand this question, we must look at Cleveland's history. And to better understand Cleveland's history, we must first take a look at its geography. Cleveland sits on the south shore of Lake Erie. The city lies on a series of bluffs where the Cuyahoga River empties into Lake Erie. This area of northeastern Ohio has been inhabited by humans since approximately 10,500 BC. At the time of European explorers arriving in the area, the Iroquois, Erie, Seneca, and Ottawa tribes lived in and around this area of northeastern Ohio. The city of Cleveland, as we know it today, was established on July 22, 1796, by surveyors of the Connecticut Land Company. The surveyors named the new settlement after its leader, General Moses Cleveland, a veteran of the American Revolutionary War. General Cleveland designed the city and laid down the foundation for what would become the center of the city, its public square, and the downtown area. You see, as far back as the mid and late 1600s, the colony, and later state, of Connecticut laid claim to vast stretches of land to its west, a practice that many colonies did at this time. Connecticut called this claimed territory to its west the Western Reserve, which happens to be the namesake of Cleveland's most prominent university today, Case Western Reserve University. And one can still see this name used in many northeastern Ohio institutions such as the Western Reserve Academy and Western Reserve Hospital. After the Revolutionary War, Connecticut sold parts of its Western Reserve to speculators with the Connecticut Land Company, who then sold it in partitions to settlers moving west from the east coast of the United States. Permanent settlers such as Lorenzo Carter began arriving in the area around 1797. During the early 1800s, the small and growing settlement of Cleveland was an important supply post for the military during the War of 1812, and its lakefront location allowed its settlers to establish trade with boat traffic on the Great Lakes. Undoubtedly, however, the single most important factor to Cleveland's rapid growth came in 1832 with the completion of the Ohio and Erie Canal. As early as the 1780s, American leaders such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson began serious discussions about a link between the Ohio River and the American interior to the Great Lakes, and thus the St. Lawrence River and the Atlantic Ocean beyond. In the 1820s, the Ohio and Erie Canal began construction, and when completed, connected Portsmouth, Ohio, on the Ohio River, to the Cuyahoga, where it empties into Lake Erie at Cleveland. Cleveland capitalized on its unique geographical position as the entry point of the canal to the Great Lakes by building railroad links between its port and all of its surrounding land areas. In the 1860s, the American Civil War proved to be a boom to Cleveland's population and its economy. Local industries manufactured railroad iron, gun parts, axles, carriages, and ships. Following the American Civil War, Cleveland began producing steel and refining oil. In fact, Standard Oil began in Cleveland as a partnership between John D. Rockefeller, William Rockefeller, Henry Flagler, and Samuel Andrews. With so many job openings and demand for cheap labor, immigrants from Ireland, Germany, and Southern and Eastern Europe began pouring into the city. Cleveland's population had doubled in only one decade from 1860 to 1870, from 43,000 to over 92,000. By 1890, Cleveland became the 10th largest city in the United States with a population of over 260,000. Cleveland was growing rapidly, and by 1900 had become America's 6th largest city. Cleveland now entered into automobile manufacturing. Automobile manufacturers such as Peerless and Winton began springing up all over the city, and large numbers of African Americans from America's South began immigrating to the city in search of work and a better way of life. With the breakout of World War I in 1914, Cleveland was called upon to manufacture war goods. And during this period, wealthy patrons of Cleveland founded and supported some of Cleveland's most important cultural institutions, such as the Cleveland Museum of Art and the Cleveland Orchestra. After the Great War ended, Cleveland had grown to the 5th largest city in the United States, and in 1920, the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, won its first World Series. At this time, 30% of Cleveland's population was foreign-born. And during the 1920s, Cleveland established its famous Playhouse Square, completed construction of the iconic Terminal Tower skyscraper, and built its first airport. Like many large American cities during this time period, Cleveland was home to numerous speakeasies and jazz clubs. Money was everywhere, and people were spending it. But this Gilded Age all came to a screeching halt with the 1929 stock market crash and subsequent era of the Great Depression. Cleveland, because of its reliance on industry, was hit particularly hard during this era. However, in 1941, with the Japanese attack on the American Pacific Fleet stationed at Pearl Harbor, Cleveland bounced back quickly due to its industrial capabilities. A major hub of the arsenal of democracy, Cleveland was the 5th largest manufacturing center in the United States during World War II. Cleveland experienced a short post-war boom following World War II, and by 1950, Cleveland had a population of 915,000 people. In the 40s and 50s, Cleveland sports teams won numerous titles. The Indians won the 1948 World Series. The Barons were champions of the American Hockey League. The Browns dominated football. Cleveland was declared the City of Champions. This is also the time when the term rock and roll was invented by local WJW disc jockey Alan Freed, and thus why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is located in Cleveland today. The 50s was Cleveland at its best, and probably when the storied city hit its high water mark. However, the 60s and 70s were much tougher on Cleveland. In the 60s, many people left the downtown area due to suburbanization. More importantly, many jobs began leaving. Cleveland was an industrial city based on auto and steel manufacturing, and this manufacturing began to slow down in the 60s due to industrial restructuring and international competition. This era was also when national attention was brought to pollution levels in Cleveland. Even though the Cuyahoga had caught fire several times in its history due to excessive levels of pollution, when the river caught fire in 1969, Time magazine brought it to America's attention. and citizens began pushing for sweeping changes to American environmental laws and for improvements to American waterways. During the 70s, escalating gang wars led to increasing violence around the city. Racial unrest broke out due to historical redlining and housing, and Cleveland became the first American city to default on its federal loans. If the 50s were Cleveland's high water mark, the 60s and 70s were definitely its low water mark. But from the 1980s to today, things have been improving for Cleveland. A gradual economic recovery has taken place, and life is beginning to flourish once again in the downtown area. Since this 80s turnaround, the Gateway Sports and Entertainment Complex with Progressive Field and Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse were completed. Additionally, the North Coast Harbor with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Cleveland Browns Stadium, and Great Lakes Science Center were built. Cleveland has also spent enormous time, money, and energy diversifying its economy, and as a result has become a leading healthcare and services center in recent years. Today, challenges remain for Cleveland, as they do for all cities. Cleveland is working hard to address ongoing problems with its schools and to address issues that remain from the deindustrialization of the 60s and 70s, such as urban blight, homelessness, and poverty. But I have faith in the great people of Cleveland to restore its city to the prominence it enjoyed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Cleveland is a city I've been to many times, and I've enjoyed myself thoroughly on each visit. I was most surprised by Cleveland's numerous city parks, which are some of the best I've seen in America. Seriously, go check out the Cleveland Cultural Gardens. I also have many friends from the Cleveland area. The ones still living in Cleveland love their city, flaws and all. The ones that have moved away still speak of Cleveland as home, and it remains near and dear to their hearts. I wholeheartedly encourage anyone watching to take a trip and discover Cleveland for themselves. They won't be disappointed. Hello friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like the content I create, please take a moment to like or share the video, or subscribe to my channel. I also want to encourage thoughtful and civil dialogue about things I got wrong or things about Cleveland I may not have mentioned, so please comment below.